Good morning, UBS, and welcome to our 6th 2017 UBS live call. You can see George there. People can see him on live stream as well. I'm going to be checking the comments here and there and everywhere. And we are going to have an amazing discussion this morning on the secrets to building a powerful community because that's what we're about. UBS Live is a powerful and big community that I have built over the last 4 years. But George, really thrives on I guess doing that for what he does, and has some really awesome tips and insights. And I've got a list of things right here that we're going to talk about. And the one that's got me curious is something about the Dunbar number. Okay, and why that matters. Okay, so let's just be patient and figure out what all of this sounds like a little bit scientific, George. So welcome to the call. Say hello.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Awesome. So I'm going to give you guys an official introduction of George, first of all, and then we'll get stuck into the call. Let me just flick the slide to his beautiful photo he sent me. Very dashing there, George. And I'll let you guys know what he does, how he does it, and then we're going to have this awesome conversation around these things that I want to learn because maybe I can do things even better. I'm always up for learning even more. So let me just open up also my comments here just to make sure if any questions. By the way, if questions, comments, anything that you want to ask, please just jump on and type it up and I will pass it between myself. But for now, George just will be responding to my comments. All right, so let me give you the official introduction. So George Siosi Samuels is a community professional and entrepreneur. By day, he works for a global financial tech company, Iris, as community manager, where he's charged with the mission of helping Iris become the most collaborative company in the world. By night, he leads the pack, an accountability community that helps creatives, professionals, and entrepreneurs stay true to their mission, complete projects on time, and raise their rates by up to 60%. In addition to becoming a community professional and entrepreneur, George is the host of the It Will Come show. Actually, I was interviewed by him just about a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago, where he interviews leaders, influencers, and professionals, exploring the connection between building communities, leadership, and growing your business or career. George has also written 4 ebooks, been featured by Ant Hill Magazine, Adobe Entrepreneur on Fire, ABC Radio, and been a speaker at a number of tech conferences, including the Slack Customer Success Summit and Pause Fest. Awesome. So that's fantastic. And we've got Entrepreneur and Fire in common, George.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, John Lee Dumas, he does things well.
Yeah, he's amazing. So, okay, so let's get going and tell me a little bit about so what's the difference between a network and a community? Because everyone say go out networking for business and all that sort of stuff. So let's sort of explore and tell these guys what those differences are. And I'm curious to see what you say because you do this day in and day out.
Yeah. So fundamentally, a a network is when you think of a social network, it's a lot about quantity and numbers. So a network is literally just the number of connections that either by first, second, or third degree. LinkedIn is a good measure of that because when you connect with people on LinkedIn, it'll show you if they are a first, second, or third degree connection.
Yes.
People, once upon a time, it was 6 degrees of separation. I think three is now the most that you'll go to. So
Yeah.
networks is literally about breadth, width. Now, communities, on the other hand, should be more about depth. So with a community, you're having people gather around an interest, or potentially, yourself if you're a personal brand. And in a community, the idea is to have the relationships go much deeper, as opposed to networks, which can stay at a very surface level. So you don't have to really know people that well in a network. It's really more just about connecting for very surface level items or things.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a great way of explaining it. And do you think you need to progress or move your network or part of your network because it can be quite wide, and
Yeah.
funnel it towards it becoming a community of relevant people? Yeah.
Yeah, so ideally, with a network, you can have a lot of a lot of communities within a network,
Mm.
right? And this this kind of goes to the Dunbar number, which we will talk about later.
Mm.
But essentially, once a group gets to a certain size, you'll find that interests, in order to manage the conversations and the depth of relationships, uh, networks will usually just subdivide naturally into groups, and this is where sort of communities and trusts start to form. And it's why you can have, a very large community at first. You'll call it a community, right? But in actual fact, it's a network, and as soon as that happens, you need to subdivide again to keep having the trust build more and more. So a perfect example is, say for example, Facebook groups.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that Mark Zuckerberg recently put out a blog post about building global community.
Mm-hmm.
So for a long time, Mark has been calling Facebook a Facebook community. But of course, there are a lot of people who don't necessarily engage with each other unless they're in their own sort of sub community, in a group. You'll notice now that up until now, the technology for Facebook has been literally about the numbers. How many friends you have, how many connections. The algorithms have been built around the quantity. But if you have a look at Mark Zuckerberg's latest post, he actually now talks about the importance of building a sense of community, and that can only happen if you actually have sub-communities. So Facebook is actually now going to be working on their technology a bit, or adding to it, to create more meaningful connections between groups as opposed to just individuals. So this is actually something that I've been harking on for a while about, that there is a difference between a network and a community, because Facebook was originally a social network, whereas now they're actually doing a pivot towards creating a sense of community, because there seems to be a lot of distrust around the world as well.
Yeah, yeah, I get it, and it makes total sense the way you explain it, because yeah, maybe that's that distinction for me, because I thought, yeah, a group would be a community, but as you say, there's way too many people to build the really close relationships and all that sort of stuff. Another thing that you put on your thing here, and I'm very curious about it. You talk about the importance of physical place in building online communities. What do you mean by
Mm.
that? I'm curious.
Yeah. So physical place, we are still physical beings, even though we have the internet, we can connect with people more quickly than ever before.
Yeah.
Physical place still plays a part in being able to anchor relationships. So, with the internet and with everybody going virtual, it was all about, everything's going digital. Retail stores now, they're going to go out of business, and, people are starting to neglect the offline. But what I'm seeing now is that you do actually need both if you're wanting to develop a community. So if you have an online group, let's use your Facebook group for example.
Yeah.
Things like events and workshops offline are actually psychologically helping to um, anchor the relationships that you formed online.
I agree.
And the physical place also can assist with emotional memory. So if you actually look back throughout history, if we go back to tribes had a very strong connection to their village or their surrounding environment, right? If you look at indigenous tribes, stories were anchored to, particular monuments or, trees, etc. So the meaning and the relationship between that helped create that sense of bond as well for the people. Because we've never been connected the way that we have or are at the moment.
Yes.
Where there's a sense of loss, right? Or people not understanding how to navigate their way through this global community, because it's reducing sort of the physical environment, borders, etc. So new rules are starting to be put together, and that's actually what excites me the most in terms of building, a global community. What will it mean for the relationship between us connecting with others around the world and the physical place locally?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when I started UBS, actually, for the first 3 years, we did do a physical monthly event 10 months out of the year. And that was really,
Mm.
really awesome. And I do 100 physical events, whether they're speaking gigs or my own events that I host. And I know, and I guess these guys have heard me talk so much about the importance of getting famous offline because the trust and intimacy builds so much more rapidly than just going full on online. And
Yes.
then you can take it back online. But I don't know, even my retreats, just being there, this connection we built with these people. There was a group of 17 of us on the weekend. And I said to them, "You'll remember it forever." And all of our past authors who've done retreats always like it's anchored. That's the key word, I guess, what you used there. That it anchors that that sense that we are physical beings. So you mentioned something like, what do you think will be the future then of how it's done on a global scale?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. This is probably what keeps me up every night. So if you've never heard if you've never heard of the term third cultured kid, I am considered a third cultured kid. I don't know if we actually spoke about that in our interview together, but
No.
third cultured kids are essentially folks who have been born in one country. Their parents are from two separate countries, but they lived in a third.
Uh,
So their sense of home actually is never bound to one place. And for me, growing up, that was a bit of how I was brought up. I was constantly moving. My yearbook in school actually had a different country. So it was like, where are you from? I put like different countries every year because I actually had no sense of home in that way. And that type of upbringing, though, has actually helped me to adjust to the global sense of community because for me, I'm not bound by nationality or I'm not bound to any one place. So wherever I've gone, I've never really felt at home there, but I have felt at home with the people, like having good people around. So TCKs are very common these days because there's a lot of globalization happening, a lot of mixing, and there's a lot of diversity. But it does also bring into question, where do TCKs sit and how do they identify themselves? And I think the first time I heard about the global citizen, that rang true for me because when somebody asks where you're from, I have a really hard time doing that because I'm an Australian citizen as well, but I have an American accent, right? And for those of you listening and trying to figure that out, I went to an American international school in Bangladesh for a majority of my childhood. So that's how that came about. But I was born in Fiji.
I love it. I love it. And even you've got such
um,
different places you're from. Yeah, go on.
yeah. So yeah, my dad's Fijian Indian. My mother is Tuvalu and Samoan. I've been fortunate enough to have traveled around during my childhood. But bringing that back to how what the future looks like, I think we could take a lot of cues from the third cultured kid community in terms of being able to help people adjust to, maybe one day saying, hey, I'm either human or I'm an earthling, or I'm a global citizen in that sense. And I think a lot of our social infrastructure, Mark Zuckerberg talks about this, that sits behind the technology, that needs to be worked on as well because technology alone will not solve all our problems. Technology is an enabler. And this ties back to the offline bit still being important to the online enablement of community building and relationship building.
Mm.
So in terms of the future, I would love for more people to experience what it's like to be a TCK or to at least have that feeling of not being bound to any one country or nation. I think it's still okay, but it's literally at the end of the day about like being able to respect differences. Because when you've been displaced or if you don't feel like you have any home, you learn very quickly to connect with other people based on who they are as opposed to where they're from. And that has shaped my worldview. It's probably how I ended up becoming a community manager. I never thought I'd be doing a role like that.
Mhm.
And yeah, just being passionate about building communities in general.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And that's what it's about. Really, people want to just be taken for what they are, not where they're from. And yeah, similar to
Mm.
you, like what you say, you have quite a few spots that you could say you're from. But even me growing up in Macedonia and then coming here in Australia, when I'm in another country, they ask me where you're from, and I kind of go, I usually will answer Australia now, but if I'm in Europe, sometimes I answer I'm from Macedonia, even though like I've lived 29 years, and I kind of go, I just don't know what to answer. Like, just take me for who I am. And actually, at our retreat, we had quite a diverse group. And one participant in particular made a point, like how he felt truly just accepted, and people were taking for who he is, not where he's come from, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it got us all crying because it was very important to him to be just accepted, you know. And yeah, so totally. But tell me about this Dunbar number and why it matters. Tell me.
All right, the Dunbar number. So the Dunbar number was actually invented or first coined by British anthropologist Robin Dunbar. And from what I remember, he found a correlation between primate brain size and average social group size. So essentially, he posited that human beings can't actually manage more than 150 meaningful relationships at any one given time.
Yeah.
And this would be a good exercise. If we had like at least an extra, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, right? I'd probably ask everybody, try and list down 150 people that you actually know well. Yeah. Most people, when I ask them this question, they can get up to maybe 10 to 20, and so this is not including followers, right? And this is the thing about social networks. On social networks, you can have a lot of followers, but in terms of meaningful relationships, that's sort of a prerequisite for communities. Dunbar posited that you can only have around 150. And so I find this theory interesting because I see this happen in my line of work. So when a business grows their membership base, especially if they have a membership-based business model, when they grow their membership base, when you get to around 150, those first 100 to 150 are considered like your true fans, right? And they're the ones who are deeply engaged with you. If you got 150 employees as well, there's a sense of family. This is spoken a lot about for startups as they scale up. And then when they get to beyond 150, the usual sentiment is like, oh, I don't feel like, it's a family anymore. I feel like we're getting corporate. There's hierarchy coming in now. But that actually naturally happens because of this Dunbar number. And I've seen it proved time and time again.
Yeah.
And I'll tie it back as well to the post that Mark Zuckerberg put out about them wanting to now focus on creating sub-communities within Facebook groups. So Facebook groups right now is just one large sort of placeholder. They're going to actually start creating having the ability to create subgroups within the parent one. And this is because if you hit more than 150, to develop the relationships even further, you can actually get groups to subdivide into those 150 person units. And this is actually really important to create a sense of community and trust on a much wider scale. It's why, like in a village, you might have seen the development of artisan groups. You might have had the welding families, or the blacksmiths and the bakers. Throughout history, you'll see that sort of subdivision and labels being put on to give a sense of identity and meaning again for the smaller numbers. So that's the Dunbar number in theory, and in practice. If you ever get a chance, 150 people, try to list it out.
Well, actually, funny enough that you talk about that, our Ultimate 48-Hour Authors have just hit about 150, 156. That's our mastermind since the time we started, the people who've attended our retreats. But what's exciting of what I've just heard, that's what he does, it creates the sub-communities. Often our retreat attendees want to create their own little group to obviously talk and hang out in. So that means that I could then divide all my retreat attendees in their retreats within that big group, and they can have that conversation, because sometimes we've started additional groups to do this. And that's awesome for people who do programs for a certain group and then another group, and they say the 20 numbers, 20 people, and because they have that click and connection, whereas with another retreat attendee, you wouldn't know, yes, you've done the same program, but you haven't spent the time. So that's really cool, and it's good to know as well. And I guess that's where you say when the companies get bigger, then it's good to segment maybe the different, I guess whatever the skills are. Maybe this is the HR department that's going to have the 50 people on, and they have their own person who's in charge of, I guess, leading their community. In talking about that, so you talk about the rituals and rhythms. So how is that important? How do you create those?
Yeah, so with ritual and rhythms, once again, a lot of modern community management stuff that I do, I look to history for. So, in the tribal setting, you would usually have, initiation ceremonies, set days for certain sort of events, and these things still carry out even till today. So if you're looking to build your own community and you're wanting to actually keep engagement up,
Yeah.
make sure you set a consistent rhythm of, for example, in Facebook groups, I think you do this very well. But you put out things like, themed days. On a Monday, it might be Monday motivation. All right, so you put out, content questions and get people to engage. And then once you do that, your community, your specific community, will get used to that rhythm, and they'll know when to show up and to engage with certain things.
Like right
And this is because, yeah, exactly, right? So we're creatures of habit,
now.
and this is an important part in terms of being able to create a rhythm for the entire group. A lot of the times, if you don't do this, you'll notice that whoever individually has the strongest sort of individual rhythm themselves, and if it's not set, the group will gravitate to that person.
Yeah.
So as a community leader as well, it's important for you to be aware of those rituals and ceremonies that you're setting it as well. Otherwise, it will be set by the community itself, which isn't a bad thing. But it's like which approach do you want to take? Do you want to just allow things to organically grow and then you sort of capture that and incorporate it? Or if you're starting from the beginning, do you want to ensure that you are setting it as well so that it fits with your lifestyle, business, or what have you?
That's a great tip, and yes, we've evolved and learned through having this community or this network for the last 4 years. And
Yep.
but the consistency is what's kept it growing. Yeah. So let me just have a look. The reason I looked away, by the way, is because my phone is not showing up comments, but it says people have reacted to this video. So I've got my other laptop down here on my left, and yes, there are comments.
Yep.
Said to you, there's these bugs in the live streaming sometimes. So let me read a couple of the comments that have come up on there because they are on the computer.
Sure.
Great feedback. Love how he explains the differences between network and community from Kitty and the physical space and the global community. And then Tash, so does that mean support groups, we should actually keep them limited to 150 from Tash?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm.
So it depends. Okay, once again, it depends. This is where it's important to grow the user base, right? So keep growing it, but it's in terms of how you engage. Okay, so I'll give an example. One of the things that I do to manage communities, I don't really manage them. What I do is I just look at which groups naturally start forming together. You look at ways to empower them. So what I would usually do is that within the community, if there's a leader that emerges very naturally, I'll usually try and delegate responsibility to that group.
Mm.
So, or to that person, be like, hey, do you want to just sort of like monitor the conversations in this particular group? And if anything that you find, especially if it's a support group, if there's anything that you find that you need help with, feed it back up to the wider, let's say, network. All right. And that's sort of the way that I would manage, and especially for a support community. I'll give another example. Reddit, which is one of like the largest online communities, and I will say they're a community because a lot of people associate themselves with being an avid Reddit fan, right, or an avid Reddit user. And they were one of the original online communities to get the organic sub-community growth thing right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there, in terms of support, is quite free and organic. Everybody, does their own thing, but they have community moderators that, just sit across multiple subreddit communities, and they use the technology to obviously just filter keywords or to monitor keywords. And then, of course, if something's getting out of hand, then they'll just perhaps interject at that point. But there's still that 150 number for meaningful relationships that takes place. And for support communities, you don't have to necessarily limit it off the bat, like as in not go beyond 150. But if you can find a way for someone to look over 150 people and develop relationships within that 150, I think that would be more ideal.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. All right, so let's talk about the last point you promised you're going to share with us: applying the community maturity cycle to better manage growth. So, what is the the community maturity cycle?
Yeah. So Just bring it up again. So the community maturity model, I believe, was developed by a group called Community Roundtable.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys are a organization that have been doing community management since the very early days of online gaming forums. So that's actually where like the field of community management came from. But there are essentially four stages. They have first is hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
second is emergent community, third stage is community, and then fourth stage is networked. So the reason why stage one, I usually like using the four seasons. So if you think about spring, summer, autumn, winter,
Mm-hmm.
in the spring phase, it's usually birth new season. Things are a bit all crazy. There's no structure whatsoever, and there is sort of like a command and control style at the beginning in terms of the leadership. So it'll start with one leader, who's obviously paving the way to build a community. They're going to be the one that everybody kind of looks up to for things to happen. The culture is very reactive. Yeah, and there's just no guidelines, right? This is the normal first stage of community building.
Mm-hmm.
Stage two, emergent community. This is where you have a lot more participants. The leadership style is a bit more of a consensus style. So now that the leader has been in for a while, I usually see this for like 9 to 18 months of consistent showing up from the leader. Um, he'll start to try and listen, hopefully, more to the community and actually get feedback from them as to what they should be doing next to grow the community.
Mm-hmm.
The culture is a bit more contributive. It isn't just about the individual leader from the beginning phase or stage one. There's some user-generated content happening, and yeah, maybe some policies. This is usually where you see community guidelines take shape, and these are signs of the emerging community.
Mm-hmm.
Stage three, so this is the autumn phase. This is where you're actually getting community in. The strategy is about building, so you're going to start perhaps bringing in more tools. You're taking the feedback from the consensus style of the previous stage, and things are going to start to get more collaborative. You may even find yourself creating defined roles and processes. So, if you at this stage or stage three, the group size is large enough that you might need some community moderators. The leader might find that things are getting a bit too hard to manage on their own, so they're going to start to delegate. And yeah, you'll start to see a lot more tools, additional tools and add-ons entering the mix for management and growth of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And the final stage, this is the winter phase, networked. The strategy is more about integration, so it's like an optimization stage. The leadership style is distributed, so not everything now can pin on the one leader. This is where you see probably you hit that perhaps 150 or some multiple of,
Mm-hmm.
and the leader needs to start delegating and creating and empowering other leaders. The culture is more activist, so you're going to have a lot of those raving fans that's part of the community now. They're going to be telling other people more about it. You're going to have a lot more integrated roles and processes, and it really is just about optimizing things and getting those. You've already got those rhythms in, and you'll know when you hit this stage. Things will feel very inclusive, and stuff are just running very smoothly. So those are the four stages of the community maturity model, and you can use this. So if you just go to communityroundtable.com and look for a community maturity model, you'll find this model there. I use this for how I help shift things for other communities, especially if I inherit a community. I'll usually do an audit, interview a whole bunch of people, figure out what stage that we're at on the community maturity model, and then build a strategy based on that stage. The biggest mistake I've seen is when people try to take up different strategies based on the wrong stage of where the community is at, and I've seen communities just fail miserably when that happens.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can see.
so that's the community maturity model.
Yeah, I can see it. I just take myself back to 4 years ago of how it started and what happened, and I could see the different stages in my head as you were describing them. But also, what I've seen, a lot of people attend a lot of meetups, and meetups, I guess, become small communities. And sometimes the organizer
Yes,
sort of gives the community to someone else because they don't want it anymore or whatever. And that's where you say
exactly.
either implode, or if the person who takes it over does the right things, and as you just said, gave some awesome tips there, interview a few people who are part of it to work out what stage they're at, and to figure out how you come in, because your style is going to be different. You've got different DNA to whoever the other leader was before that. So that's really cool. Yeah, I love it. I think all of these things have had a
And I
lot.
might add,
Yeah, go on.
oh, sorry, the audio delay. I might add very quickly as well that like with communities, you have to be willing to play the long game. If
Yeah.
you're going to say that you're wanting to build a community,
Mm.
it's a lifetime commitment. You
Yeah.
are building trust, you are building relationships, and I've seen a lot of people attempt to build community, and as you said, right, they get to a certain point where they just it's too much for them. They're not aware of the different stages where they can naturally delegate to other people, and so they give up, before the community has really had any time to sort of ground itself. And so usually I see this happen less than 9 months. And from experience, it takes up to 18 months when you're starting a community of consistent effort, um, if you really want that community to have a chance of growing. And it really does pin on the leader at the beginning to consistently show up for those first 18 months. I've seen every time a leader like kind of drops the ball, yeah, the community goes into disarray and just quickly disbands, or somebody else, takes over. It's a different leadership style and it gets weird.
Yeah.
I've seen it like on Facebook groups multiple times.
Mm.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that like community is a very long-term game.
Yeah.
Networks can be quick and fast if you want. If you want to just build a network, yeah, go ahead, exponential growth. But community, yeah, long game.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, I think people always say to me that the reason you're good at what you do, or why, it's just your consistency. Like, you always, no matter what, you just turn up. You keep turning up and you keep turning up and all that. And that's the thing, a lot of people want to live an ad hoc life or have an ad hoc flexible business. And that's where the results don't eventuate. It's just people. I wrote a blog just a week ago, might have come out about it. Like that, we're actually creatures of habit, and that
Yes.
we need. Creatures of habit and routine. Sorry, and as you said, the
Yes.
rhythms and the rituals that you spoke of earlier are exactly all of those routines. As babies thrive on routines. So why wouldn't adults thrive on it? That's why the model of the 9 to 5 was designed, because it's that consistency that is delivered and all that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's a bad model. It's just that you're just working under someone else's rules, and unless you step up. And I know how ad hoc the business felt in the first 2 years, and now there's a whole. It's like, this is what I've got to do. This is my exercise time. This is when I start work. This is when I have lunch. And I've created a 9 to 5 model for myself. Whatever, it's not that same, but I'm the boss of how I run that model, and that's exactly what
Yeah.
you say. Wonderful. All right, so we're coming close to our end of the time, so
Yeah.
let's hear about George's way of how we can connect with him. I'm just going to move this a little bit to what you are gifting our awesome UBS members, and that is you've got a free ebook that you've
Yeah.
created, how to create your own accountability group, which is so important for solopreneurs, right? And we've got that link up there, which is it will co.me /UBS, and he's given us a discount code because normally, guys, you do need to pay for this. And he
Yep.
offered it for free. So do you want to tell us a little bit about it? And I will do my best, to
Yeah.
cut and paste this into the
No worries.
comments box. What will the guys get by downloading?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. So yeah, while you're doing that, I'll just talk about it. Yep. So yeah, with the accountability group, this ties back to the pack, which Nat mentioned earlier on. So because by day I'm managing other people's communities, by night I'm building my own, and I've actually started with this concept of a team of teams. So for my podcast, the It Will Come show, I remember interviewing an ex-commando who talked about his experiences in the army and what actually helped to create real deep bonds and a sense of trust. And when you have a lot of different units in the army, there was a story about how things have changed a lot for the army in terms of things having to move from a very hierarchical culture to a little bit more fluid, especially when they were, like say, the U.S. and the world were fighting against Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda had a fighting style that was very agile and nimble. And one of the things that made it so great for them was that they had these like small team units, which ties back to community management about the Dunbar number again. So in terms of being able to have these really strong communities, there's a sense of accountability and discipline that needs to be existing there at the beginning, and it goes back to the rituals. And this is why I started the pack as helping to build my own community that has sort of the discipline and accountability there from the get-go, right? And so this helps with this helps with your community become more resilient over time. So the discipline and accountability does not have to be equated with no fun. It's literally just about having those rhythms there that the whole group gets used to together, that they have that collective identity for. So the ebook that I have is actually taking lessons that I've learned already from building the pack, and how you can help embed more resilience into your community long term, so that one day, Nat, if you do, leave the community, the culture is there, right? The culture is embedded, and that everybody knows what to expect. Of course, one of the downsides, some could argue, is that like this is where traditions are formed, and traditions sometimes can be very difficult for people to deal with. But just knowing that if you can build change or embed change as a cultural value, it'll allow people to constantly change and move as well together. So if you're looking to create your own accountability group or start your own community, this is a great way to start a community that will have a much greater chance of success in terms of resilience over time. If you have your own business, everyone should have like an accountability group, because what it does, it just allows people to form together and actually have each other facing each other, as opposed to just the leader all the time or just the content. The community can start to form those relationships with each other. That's where you really start to see communities take form. So that's what you'll find in the ebook: exercises, questions that you can answer, and I hope you enjoy it.
Cool, thank you so much. And just from Sonia from Perth is just asking, what's your podcast called? It Will Come Show, is that right?
Yeah. So Nat, maybe in the URL you can change the itwillco.me to itwillcomeshow.com. It might be easier to remember. The itwillco.me is it will come, but just shortened for a hyperlink. But yeah, in the slides, itwillcomeshow.com.
Put those things in the comments of the Facebook live stream, which we can't see on the phone, but once we get off the call, put all those things, and then that's where, guys, we can find them, and I'll also put them in the YouTube description of this recording and things like that. So that'd be awesome. So go grab that, guys, for yourselves. And I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It just kind of brought my focus back to what it is, what it takes, and obviously how you can have start your own one, and start with that mind of it being successful, and you do this day in and day out for both your own business and for Iris and all that sort of stuff. So it's amazing. I thought, very unique insights, and a lot of obviously research that's been done behind it. So thank you very much. I'm just going to tell the guys what's happening next week. So bear with me. Here we go, guys. So next week I don't have a guest for you, but that's all good, because we're actually going to talk a little bit about, take a step back and talk about Author Your Way to Riches. So earlier last week I started a new network to bring a conversation. I guess I'm subdividing, as you said, George. People often come to me and ask me about authoring, and Ultimate Business Support is kind of a big umbrella for business support. Like today, we're talking about community. Last week we were talking about blogging. The week before, I'm just trying to think back, joint ventures. And so, yes, there's many big, important topics to make a successful business. And so then I thought, well, this is what I'm known for. It's Ultimate 48-Hour Author. So then I subdivided, if you like, those relevant people into a new community, which is Author Your Way to Riches. So I'm going to go through, I actually posted a mega mind map, and I don't have it on these slides, unfortunately, but I'm going to go through this mind map of all of the things that I have done to author my way and to help my authors author their way to riches. So I thought I'd come on because the day before I go to Adelaide, it's going to be a crazy, crazy 6 weeks coming up with the national tour. So I'm going to go through that and deliver that to you guys, because I hardly ever talk about authoring on these UBS live calls, because I've got the guests and I'm always teaching other aspects of business. So we're going to go back to, I'll be your special guest, right? And take you through that. And what I wanted to finish off on is I always like to finish off when what is it, a quote if you like, and I pulled up a couple of different things here. The richest people in the world look for and build networks. Everyone else looks for work. So that was from Robert Kiyosaki, and we've heard the difference between a network and a community. And obviously, I think that the next quote here is, there is no strength without unity, which I believe relates to community. Yeah. So, George, thank you very much. It's been very insightful, and I'll share all of this with our networking community. I'll be very careful how I use those two words now after talking to you. And everyone is saying thank you, and thank you, George, from Elaine and Nat, for a very interesting, informative webinar. Thanks for Christiane, Sonia. And we're probably going to have to go on Facebook now and figure out what people have been talking about while we've been talking here, because it's just absolutely no comments on my phone. So let's go across, give them those links over there, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good day and
Thanks
great.
for having me.
My pleasure. Bye.